So lesson 2.3, scatter plots, introduction. Learning goals. Create a scatter plot from a table of values, and we're going to use a graph, once we've created it, to describe data. So below you'll see there's a chart that shows the number of times a student was late for math class in a month, and the student's mark in the class. So for example, there's one student in the class who has 12 late arrivals and a mark of 65. Or someone else in the class was 4 late arrivals and a mark of 75, and etc., as you go down the table. Alright, so we're going to start by asking the question, which variable is the independent variable and why? So if I look at the table, the first hint that I can give you is that normally, whatever comes first in the table is the independent variable. So let's see if that makes sense. If I look on this side here, I have the number of late arrivals. So if this is the independent variable, then that would mean that in this study or in this collection of data, we're trying to find out if the mark depends on, so that's the dependent variable, if the mark depends on the number of late arrivals. And that makes sense. So independent comes first in the table, and it makes sense because we want to see if the mark depends on the number of late arrivals. So below you should fill in that it's the number of late arrivals and if you ask why, not only does it come first in the table, but because that a bit hard to read. Because the mark depends on the number of late arrivals. Mark depends on it. Or that's what the study is trying to prove. That's what we're trying to find out by looking at the graph. All right. When you are ready to make your scatter plot then, keep in mind the independent variable always goes on the x-axis. So this axis label should be number of late arrivals. And on the vertical axis, the y-axis, we should have mark. And the mark is not out of something, it's a percentage. So we'll write it down as a percent out of 100. Okay, and then your title is based on that. So you start with the dependent variable. You start with the word mark. So this is marks versus number of times late. And this is a strategy you can use all the time when you are creating titles for your scatter plots. You need to list first the dependent variable versus the independent variable. Okay, so now we're ready to actually plot. Once you have your titles, you need to decide what you'd like to count by when you are graphing. So if this is my 0 mark, I need to know what goes along the x-axis and what numbers I should use for the y-axis. So here's a strategy to help you out. When you're looking at one column at a time, so let's say we deal with number of late arrivals, that's these values only, we need to make sure we included all the possible values. So the lowest value on this chart is 0. And the highest possible value is 18. To calculate range, you subtract the highest minus the lowest value. Subtracting the two, 18 minus 0 is 18. Okay, and the next step is to calculate the range divided by the number of boxes. So if I go back to the box, or to the graph, sorry, and count the boxes along the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. By doing this, you ensure, so we have 18 divided by 19, which is approximately 1. It's a little bit less than 1, but you always want to round up. That will be what we should count by. So we should count by 1 so that we are able to distribute the points evenly. Go back and do that. So this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so on. And make sure that you're writing on the lines and not on the spaces, because it's not a bar graph, it's a scatter plot. Okay, then we'll need the values for the y-axis, where the marks are going to be listed. So if you take a look at all the marks, the lowest mark is 45 right there. And the highest mark is 90. So the range in this case will be 90 minus 45, which is 45. Okay, so when we're looking then at the graph, we're going to count the number of values on the y-axis, but because we're not starting at 0 this time, we're going to start at 45, we need to put a little break. Looks like a little lightning bolt on the side there, so that we can start with 45. That's our lowest possible value. There's no point leaving everything else, it'd be empty space. So if we do that, when we're counting boxes, then we don't have that bottom one anymore. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 boxes. So in our calculation, we will do 45 divided by 17. And our answer is approximately, once again, round up to a number that's easy to work with, approximately 3. So that means that when we go back to our graph, we're going to count on this axis by 3. So from 45, the next value will be 48. And the next one is 51. And if you ever find that you're having trouble writing everything in because it's tight, and you want to skip 2 boxes, that's okay too. Just remember that everything's worth 3. So if this is 51 plus 3 plus 3, that's 6 more, so that's 57. So every 2 boxes is worth 6. So that'll be 63 2 boxes later, because there's 60 in the middle, and then 69. Let's make that a bit more accurate. Okay, 69. And then 2 boxes later, we are at 75 plus 6, 81, plus 6, 87, plus 6, 90, 93. Okay, and then all of our values should be able to fit within 45 to 93 and 1 to 19 along the x-axis. When you're plotting the points, you're going to need to look at the table and match each of the values 12, which is your x value along your independent axis, and 16, which is your y value along the vertical axis. So we're going to look for 12 and 65. 12 and 65, because I know that right here is 66, so it's just below that. 12, 66. Right about there. And obviously the sharper your pencil is going to make it easier to draw graphs like this, because you're going to have to be as accurate as possible. Okay, so I'm just going to continue and plot the rest of the points, and I want you to do the same, and then we'll see if yours matches what mine looks like. Alright, so now all my points are plotted. So you have a representation of all the students in the class and all of their late marks, all of their late arrivals and all of their marks. Okay, and afterwards on the back you'll notice just a list of vocabulary. What is a scatter plot? What is a dependent variable, and some notes on it? What's an independent variable, and some notes on it? And what's an outlier? And that would be a point that differs significantly from the rest of the data. So I'm going to ask you to consider, if I try to find trends, are there any points that differ significantly from the rest of the data? Okay, and then there's a few questions to follow that we'll try together.